Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining us today at the virtual CSRI conference. Wishing we could all be together in person in Columbia and come together over drinks or coffee and research, but that will come. I'm very hopeful of that. So again, thanks for joining us today. And if you give me a second, I will share my screen, maybe, and get started on our presentation. So I'm going to talk with you today about an adaptive lifestyles model that I came up with alongside my colleagues, Doctors Allison Smith, Jeff Graham, and Rob Harden. And at the end, I'll share some contact information. Would love to connect with y'all further to discuss not only this project, but other projects related to the idea around work-life balance, the work-life interface of folks working in college athletics. So if you're here, I know you probably know the literature. I won't spend too much time on the front half of our presentation, but theory focusing on work-life balance really hinges on the idea that balance is achievable and that it's the end goal within the life of an employee. And there are numerous factors that can create conflict between work and personal life, and some factors that are specific to intercollegiate athletics include things like non-traditional hours, long hours, weekend work, frequent travel, things like that. And if you think about the personal life, we typically in previous research have been talking about the idea of a traditional family, so a partner and children. But today's employee, a personal life can mean so many things. It can mean extended family. It can mean taking care of parents instead of the traditional idea of taking care of children. It can be the idea that they want leisure time outside of work. So the way that we conceptualize work and non-work is really inclusive, and the reason that we do that is because we know that every person's non-work responsibilities are just as unique as their work responsibilities. And so we don't want to suggest that because someone has kids that they face more non-work responsibilities than someone who has parental care, because they're just different and they're unique. And so to combat this work-life interface, a lot of theories offer recommendations to try to alleviate these tensions. So this slide summarizes some of the most common theories associated with the work-life interface. And I'm not going to read all of them to you. I'll pause on this slide for a little bit in case you want to read more in depth, if you want to see the citations. But within our project, we really focused on comparing what we create, the adaptive lifestyles model, to 4 theories: role theory, scarcity theory, boundary theory, and border theory. And one thing that's really important to note with each of these theories, in addition to the idea that they believe that balance is achievable, is that a lot of the achieving of this balance is placed on the employee. So if you look at role theory, they believe that balance is achieved through proper role management. And so what they believe is that if an employee communicates with their partner or engages in role negotiation with their partner, or increases or decreases their engagement in a specific role at a certain time, they can then kind of decrease the conflict that they experience. So one additional common factor of these theories, in addition to the fact that they believe that balance is achievable, is that they also place a lot of the onus on the employee, and there isn't a lot of conversation about how employers or organizations can help foster a better balance between work and non-work activities. However, much of the research that we see within intercollegiate athletics suggests a culture characterized by imbalance. And this isn't something that we just hear from head coaches at the Division I, Power 5, or autonomy level. This isn't just something that we hear from conference commissioners or athletic directors. This is something we hear from employees across the board, from entry-level employees, even graduate assistants, all the way up to athletic directors and conference commissioners. So the idea of imbalance and a culture that's really characterized by imbalance, and even so far as to having the employees accept that imbalance, is something that's really, really common within intercollegiate athletics. So back to a couple slides ago when I was sharing all of the theories, one thing that we really wanted to note is that it isn't just on the employee, that the onus is not just on the employee, and that there are different pressures that exist within different levels. So macro, meso, and micro level pressures that exist that are impacting the work-life interface of intercollegiate athletic department employees. So absolutely things like human and social capital at the micro level can influence the experiences of employees. But at the meso level, things like organizational culture and the work-life interface can also impact the experiences as well. So for instance, if an assistant coach works with a head coach who is at the office from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. every day, that creates a culture that suggests in order to be successful, in order to be viewed as though you're doing your job to the best of your ability, you also need to be there for those long hours. And if the head coach has a partner who's supportive, perhaps they stay home, can take care of the children if they have children, or doesn't have a significant other, it's easy for them to work those long hours. They really can pour their life into their job. However, if an assistant coach has a family, has parental care responsibilities, would just like to go home at a reasonable hour and maybe binge watch Netflix or work out, attend an exercise class, something like that, they may want to leave before 8 p.m. They may want to come in after 6 a.m. And so the nature of the organizational culture or overwork culture or whatever it looks like in that organization is also really, really influential. And then at the macro level, we see things like hegemonic masculinity, issues related to power, institutionalized gender discrimination. So there's a plethora of research to suggest that women are sometimes pigeonholed into certain positions that are considered the soft areas of intercollegiate athletics. So things like academic advising or life skills, because they're nurturing, but also because they hold more of a typical 9-to-5 schedule. And so that would allow a woman to also complete some of the traditional gender roles that come with being married, having a family, and that sort of thing. So part of this model that we created and that we really, really want to emphasize is that there are pressures coming from every different level, and each of these levels interact with each other. So we cannot put all of the onus on the employee to figure out how to navigate the work-life interface and to combat all these conflicts that do come up when you're trying to navigate and manage work and non-work duties. So what we did is we came up with this idea of the adaptive lifestyles model. And what this does is it provides a different understanding and perspective to the work-life interface, especially for those who work in the intercollegiate athletics industry. So research continues to show that work-life balance is not achievable in intercollegiate athletics, with some employees even coming to expect imbalance as part of their job. So consequently, when we examine the work-life interface experiences using these theories, it's problematic because we're focusing on the possibility and desirability of balance in the work-life interface. But it's just not possible, right? And so a really, really common example, a really easy example is the University of Georgia head women's basketball coach, Johnny Taylor, who gave birth to her second child just 12 hours after coaching her team to victory over Ole Miss, and then returned to the bench 2 days later to be on the bench with the team for a win against Arkansas. Even though she wasn't technically coaching, she was still there. She still managed to birth a child and then gather herself enough to come and sit on the bench with her team. And so part of this, what we really wanted to look at with this adaptive lifestyles model, is that work-family conflict has been found to be good in some instances. I know it has a very negative connotation, but recent work has found that work-family conflict partially mediates the relationship between work engagement and work addiction, meaning work-life conflict actually acted as a buffer of work engagement turning into workaholism. So um, the idea behind this new model is that the current models that we're working from are not appropriately measuring what's happening in intercollegiate athletics. So when we use them to look at instances of work-life balance and in intercollegiate athletics, work-life imbalance, we continue to say that the employee isn't doing enough. Because if you remember back, that's what the theory suggested, is that if the employees did a good enough job at boundary management or ensuring that they were using their time the most effectively, that they could manage their time. So what you'll see on the screen here is a typical model of work-life imbalance. And so this figure highlights the work domain on the left and the life domain on the right. And it discusses how the requirements, strains, and behavioral norms from both work and personal life can create potential incompatibilities. So for instances of imbalance and tensions between work and personal life, which is depicted in the center. So both work both the personal domain and work domain compete for someone's time, that's really the idea behind these theories, is that the employee then has to navigate how they manage. Also influencing the individual's actions are sanctions against the individual for non-compliance. So that is, as an individual rejects the demands of one role, there are often negative consequences resulting from the decision that maybe block the requests or behaviors. For example, if an athletic director meets a donor for dinner and misses a family birthday celebration, this could cause hostility, disappointment, and further strain on the family relationship. In contrast, if a head coach leaves the office early to attend a family function, assistant coaches and graduate assistant coaches may feel disappointed or frustrated with the head coach for choosing their personal life over work and leaving them to complete coaching tasks on their own. Finally, the traditional model theorizes an individual's level of role salience for a given domain also pushes and pulls toward one domain or another. So the individual achieves balance through various behaviors geared toward managing domain requests, consequences, and personal role saliency. So this is what a lot of the theories from the literature review slide suggest is happening. And as the employee is pushed and pulled in different directions, they have to make decisions about how they're going to spend their time. So this adaptive lifestyles model that we proposed emerged from a series of studies focusing on the experiences of women working at different levels of intercollegiate athletics. And throughout all of the studies, questions were asked about this idea of work-life balance. And the idea of balance was really foreign to a lot of the women who we were able to speak with, and who researchers from additional previous work were able to speak with. As much of their personal life had been focused on work in attempts to progress their career, oftentimes their personal life was put on hold, or those moves to progress their career came at the expense of their personal life. And although research may suggest that achieving balance leads to a more fulfilled life, women working in intercollegiate athletics recognize the challenges with attempting to achieve balance and engaged in some tasks that allowed them to fulfill their life both personally and professionally, even if they actually weren't engaging in balance. So for instance, in speaking with Division I conference commissioners, they mentioned purposefully scheduling their day. So they said, working out is really important to me. And so I want to ensure that I get my workout in during the day. And so, oops, sorry. What that means is that I have to do it first thing in the morning. And so I'm going to hit the gym at 7 a.m. I'm going to work out until 8 or 8:15. I'm going to shower, get ready at the gym, and then I'm going to head to work at 9. So I know that I shouldn't schedule any work-related meetings before 9 because that won't allow me enough time to exercise in the morning. And so that then allowed them to work later into the evening because they knew that they had completed their daily tasks in terms of this is what I want to do for my personal life or my non-work life. They also did things like purposefully scheduling personal travel within work travel. So if they had to travel to a conference in, say, Los Angeles, and they have family who lives outside of Los Angeles, they would tack on a few days before or after the conference or the game or whatever it was, and so that they could see their family or friends and then engage in their work activities. And they said things like, there are going to be times when family is all consuming, and you hope there aren't too many times when work is all consuming, but you have to make time for those instances. So the idea is that what these women are engaging in is really an adaptive lifestyle that allows them to make changes on the fly and really engage in activities that will enhance the longevity of their career so that they don't get burned out. So similar to the traditional model, we have the same concepts here. We have the work domain, the life domain, and then the potential incompatibilities in the center. But as you see with this updated model, the flow of the chart, if you will, has been modified a little bit. So the potential pressures from the work domain, they remain the same. Working in intercollegiate athletics is accompanied by many opportunities for pressure, pressures of time, strain, and behavior to influence individuals and present them with challenges that they must combat. However, the adaptive lifestyles model changes at this point. So rather than being faced with additional pressure from the personal life domain, to which individuals must also respond to, right? The individual brings the work domain pressure with them into the personal life domain. And the personal life domain then adjusts to the pressure from the work domain, aligning kind of with everything that's happening with the individual in attempts to accommodate the work domain and alleviate these pressures. As you can kind of see by the arrows that flow from the work domain through the potential incompatibilities into the personal life domain. So for example, when a college coach is faced with the work domain pressure of working long hours in preparation for an upcoming game, their personal life role partners may respond to this pressure in a number of different ways. They may respond by reducing expectations of time together or supporting the coach by granting additional time away from home without scorn or judgment. And by doing this, they allow for the employee to complete all of the work domain requirements that they have to complete. And they do that with an understanding attitude. They engage in sympathy and empathy and encouragement for the work domain. So in this way, the personal life domain adjusts to and accommodates the work life, reducing potential incompatibilities and creating harmony and a sustainable interface. So we think that this better reflects what's happening in intercollegiate athletics. So we do see, though, that the work life does do some things to try to enhance that work-life balance or decrease work-life conflict, right? So spouses, partners, family, close friends might receive tickets to a game, or family might get to travel to bowl games or away contests or something like that. So the idea is that there is a little bit of give and take, but ultimately at the end of the day, even if the family comes with to the bowl game, the employee is still going to have to work. And so that work domain really always takes precedent, but with some of the accommodations coming from the employer, it does make it a little bit easier to adjust. So some potential practical implications of this is first and foremost that an organizational culture needs to change in order to see better work-life balance. And what that means is that athletic administration needs to begin to create adaptive policies and procedures for their coaches, administrators, and early career professionals by encouraging personal life role partnership interactions on campus, in the athletic department or athletic events, and encouraging spousal and children travel, flexible scheduling, and telecommuting. But these policies alone are not enough. Ultimately, the adaptive lifestyles policies will need to work to change the organizational culture. And these changes must come from the top down. So conference commissioners, athletic directors, head coaches, which would then signal a shift in leadership priority. And so the shift in priority would illustrate to employees that their personal life and well-being was valued, as well as their value as an employee, as well as how well they perform on the field or the court, right, in terms of their coaching duties or their work-related duties. So the idea is that administration would be signaling that it's okay to work smarter, not harder. And what a lot of the previous literature on work engagement has focused on is this idea that we need employees to be more engaged. And typically what more engagement looks like is more hours, longer hours, more time at work. And what this model that we've created suggests is that we actually need to be more adaptive in how we're allowing our employees to work. If an employee can get their work done in 4 hours, why have them come into the office for 12? Or if an employee can get their work done from home twice a week and they commute an hour into work, why have them commute if they can do that same work from home, right? Another thing that's really important to think about is the impacts of a person's job position or the amount of power that they have within the organization. So oftentimes head coaches have clauses in their contract that allows for family travel to away competitions, at least a certain number of games per year, and most frequently includes things like postseason family travel. However, if you're an assistant coach or graduate assistant, you likely don't have those same perks. And so it's really important that this comes from the top and makes it all the way down to the most entry-level employees, because those employees are the future of the organization. And if they are not able to withstand the culture and they get burned out from this imbalance, we're going to lose some of our best employees. So as previously mentioned, there has been a good deal of literature looking at this idea of work-life balance within intercollegiate athletics. And some future research can look at demographics outside of gender identity. So a lot of the previous research has focused largely on women working in intercollegiate athletics. So expanding that research out to include race, ethnicity, position, and looking at things like usage or expected usage of adaptive strategies, and then, as mentioned, impacts on position and power as well. So we're hopeful that with the implementation of this adaptive lifestyles model, we can begin to better assess and understand the experiences of intercollegiate athletic department employees. Because right now, the idea that balance is achievable is not necessarily what's happening in intercollegiate athletics. And so what that leads to happening is, in the analysis, we talk about how employees are not as productive as they could be because of X, Y, and Z, but they're really specific to the individual, those micro level factors. And what this adaptive lifestyles model tries to get at is more of the meso level organizational culture of the athletic department. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. And you can see on this slide all of my awesome co-authors who helped not only come up with this PowerPoint, but also the model that we put together for this. This slide includes our email and also our Twitter handles. So if you have questions, comments, anything like that, would love to talk more with you about this project and again, other projects that we have going on as well. So thanks again so much for joining me. And I'm hopeful that I get to see everyone in person in Columbia in 2022.